sports fans? Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Who is this handsome fella? New look, new show, same old topics as usual. Talking all about sports. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. Wherever and however you may be watching and listening, thanks for making us part of your evening. Live on all platforms known to man, Roku, iHeartRadio, and all social media platforms. All for simple matters. Like, subscribe, hit the bell button, keep you up to date on future and past episodes. What a wild weekend, and it's only going to finish up here with the Vikings and the Rams. I'm excited about this game. Now, like I said before, I like my chances on the Minnesota Vikings. Chase out for a bit, maybe joining up here in a little bit. But we got a lot to talk about on a wild card weekend. So there's lots and lots of news to break down. But I do want to end up saying this. So wild card weekend has been nothing short of fun. It has been amazing. So it all ended up in the last game of Sunday. And that was Washington and Tampa Bay. What you are seeing right now in a culture build in Washington is basically what we've been saying all year long and what I've been predicting when the season started. This team would end up finishing up second in the NFC East. And at the same time, they're just kind of riding along this fun train. And after last night, I think it's time to put some respect on the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels. So even if there's adversity that's faced their way, you got to think. Lots of people didn't even know what the Washington Commanders were going to look like all throughout the season. And then by the time they got closer into where playoffs start to punch in, this team looks for real for the future. And I'm happy and excited for every Commanders fan that's out there who's had to deal with a ton of hell and has had to deal with so much. Now the Washington Commanders, they come into the playoffs, they steal away a win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and look at where they are now. And I think Jaden Daniels deserves a lot of credit for this. You know, a young rookie out of LSU, where the one thing that I was questionable about, but I believed that Dan Quinn could instill a lot of trust and a lot of confidence in his young quarterback. Former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, the guy who's been there, done that. He's been to a Super Bowl. And not to mention, too, his defensive schemes has helped tremendously to build confidence in Jaden Daniels. But a lot of this is because Jaden was built for this moment. You know, you start looking at a lot of quarterbacks in this league who haven't won a playoff game. Justin Herbert, we'll talk a little bit about the Chargers a little bit later on. Tua Tagovailoa, multiple other really good quarterbacks who still have yet to win a playoff game. And Jaden Daniels, a rookie this year, managed to surpass many of them. That's why the future is so bright. And you could tell in that building in Washington, all these players, they're bought in and they're invested in playing with Jaden Daniels. He just brings that kind of energy and he brings that kind of momentum for anybody that wants to play in Washington. That's just what it is. And so I think Washington is going to be competitive for a long time. You're already starting to see it shape. You're already starting to see it flourish. Just wait until they make a massive jump. But this year, they're just riding the wave. They're just riding exactly this train that all season long, nobody even predicted this team that they could do with what they're doing right now. And they are. And I think it's clear. Washington has such a bright future, and I'm excited for what's to come in the near future. But I felt like all through that game, you would think a rookie quarterback, who normally these guys do get frantic in high-rise spots, but not Jaden. Jaden kept his cool, kept exactly his head on straight, and this is what it is. So I feel like this has just become so important for Washington's build, and I'm all for it. I can't wait for what the future holds for them, but this is a team you really got to start to show some respect on. This team's done a lot to really kind of get themselves to where they turned around from a hellish and brutal owner in Dan Snyder in the past to where they are right now as a playoff team. They've more than deserved it. So I think the future is absolutely bright for them. Okay, so this was interesting. So early on, the Dallas Cowboys, and this was announced just early on during the day, but the Dallas Cowboys have announced that Mike McCarthy is out. So this benefits Mike McCarthy more than the Dallas Cowboys, if you truthfully think about it, because the Cowboys this year missed the playoffs, had a ton of injuries. But here's the other thing, too, that you also have to understand about the Cowboys this year, is that they are paying a B-plus quarterback A-plus money, $60 million a year. And this is all in the workings of Jerry Jones. So the Dallas Cowboys, well respected as a franchise of what Jerry Jones has done over the years since he's been an owner. Okay, he's provided the money, very smart when it comes to marketing, but in the end, last time this team even won a championship was back in 95. The last time that this team even made it to the championship was longer than that. So what you're seeing right now with the Dallas Cowboys is the thing that is a cautionary tale, because they're going to have a lot to think about during free agency and the amount of money that they're able to spend in free agency. And I think a lot of that just kind of comes to fruition of who Jerry Jones is and what's on his mind. You know, he's always on, national medias in Dallas because it's a big money market. And at the same time, he just is. This is what the Dallas Cowboys are shaped around. Jerry Jones apparently makes his own say, is a GM of his own. And Mike McCarthy, and here's what's funny about this. So Mike McCarthy, you know who his agent is? Don Yee, who's a well-respected agent. Okay, and he saw this the second that Mike Vrabel, and we'll get to that a little bit later on, when Mike Vrabel took the job in New England, you could already see that New England, they're not a broken franchise. Okay, they're not. They don't have a broken culture. All it is you're turning the page from 20 years of dominance with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. You're looking for something new. And what Robert Kraft is doing is he's rewriting his wrongs. Knew that he hired the wrong guy at Gerard Mayo. They tried it. They tested it. It didn't work. It kind of failed. And now you're making this up by getting Mike Vrabel. And that's what you should have done early. So now, once you saw the Vrabel hiring, Don Yee, who's very smart at this, and especially when it comes to marketing certain people, like he's looking at it like, you're never going to get a chance at this. Okay, this is the perfect window of opportunity. And Dallas has shown you that this roster is not built for championships. It's also not even built to even win playoff games. And you're having to now teeter with the fact that Dak Prescott is being paid $60 million a year as a quarterback. You need a number 2 receiver. You also need to fix that front line. You need to fix the offensive line. You need a run game. You need everything. And that's what's hard about Dallas. But a lot of this stems to Jerry Jones. All of this. Because think about it. When Jerry Jones went on the public and basically said that he purchased this franchise, not for his kids, he basically said this was all for him. Well, you know how this franchise is shaped. It's all shaped under Jerry Jones. And who in the hell wants to be under that kind of management? This is why the Dallas Cowboys aren't truthfully taken seriously as a franchise anymore. They're not. Okay, they've been America's team years ago. Now they're not. They're not America's team. Used to be the New England Patriots. Now it turns out it's the Kansas City Chiefs. You got to turn that page. You got to rip off bandages. You got to get real. Okay, and Jerry Jones, I mean, look, he spent time on medias, basically ripping certain people who overly criticized him. Okay, he spent time expressing his thoughts and his feelings about what's been happening with the Cowboys season and all the rest of it. And then not to mention, takes time to basically be part of a cameo of one of the hit shows Landman, basically explaining about oil and gas in Texas. Okay, this is just who Jerry Jones is. And this is his world. Mike McCarthy's basically going like, I can't shape anything on this roster. I got Dak, who's literally overpaid. I've got an offensive line that's not completely into fruition at all, because after once Travis Frederick and possibilities, Zach Martin might retire. Whoa, who are you going to honestly build around? And not to mention, you ain't even got a healthy enough run game. You trusted Zeke? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I think a lot of this is, you know what? It's funny. When he mentioned about this, that he purchased the franchise strictly for himself and not for his kids, it almost feels like he's the Vince McMahon of the NFL. That's what it feels like. He's not passing this down to his kids outside of Stephanie McMahon. I mean, when you look at Stephen Jones, how in the hell do you think he's feeling in that building? So the Dallas Cowboys, until they actually rip the Band-Aid off and unless they actually get real with themselves, this is who they are, and probably going to build a track record of who they're going to be for the next 10 years if they don't get this right. So Dallas right now, I mean, you're watching Philly, who look at how strong their culture is, and I understand that they usually get away with a lot of things. But Philly, they've had a track record of winning. They've had a track record of successes, including division titles. And what are the Cowboys? And even the Washington Commanders, who won a playoff game last night. Okay, and they're going into the divisional round. Now, chances are they going to end up going further? I don't know. It depends. But in the end, Washington's future is bright. And they've got enough money to spend in the cap to make it happen. So what are the Cowboys doing? Not a damn thing. And that's specifically and strictly the reason why we scrutinize them. Because a lot of this is all stemming on Jerry Jones. Until he actually gets this right, this is who the Cowboys are. I can never figure them out. And I have so many respected Cowboy creators out there. I have a lot of people that are close in the Dallas Cowboy building. And they all are very honest and they're real. And they explain about what is happening in the state of Dallas. They are. So I just think Jerry Jones, he's going to have a very long look in the mirror of what's happening. And Mike McCarthy, by the way, this benefits him more because then he'll go to a different organization and chances are he might actually be fit for the Chicago job. Think about it. He might be. He might be fit for that Chicago job. And I think it might actually work out. It may not be as crazy as most people think it is, but there's a lot to really look forward to. And I think right now, if they don't figure this out, they'll be far behind. And I think a lot of that now is you're watching other underdog teams out there make noise. And the Cowboys, they're just as quiet and you could hear crickets. So who knows? Who knows what'll happen? But they need to figure it out because now they need a coach and somebody, and who knows if they're going to actually get one that's more competent. I mean, just last year, Bill Belichick wanted the Dallas job. He did. Never gave it to him because you know how Jerry is. He's always looking for yes men, always looking for somebody that's going to say at least the right things, no matter good or bad, that happened in this organization. That's what he's looking for. So it's just not a good day for Dallas. It really isn't. And I think Dallas fans, they've all have just ripped apart, Jerry Jones, no matter how many times that he seems to get on national media, whether it's on radio or television broadcast, whenever he wants to speak his mind, everybody's just like, just please hide him put him in the corner, so yeah, interesting stuff. But man, what a wild weekend it was. By the way, the Houston Texans, what a game it was. CJ Stroud getting his second playoff game win. There's a lot to really discuss. But man, we've had a very good weekend. And it's only going to end up from here as we got Minnesota and the Rams tonight in Arizona. So excited for this game in particular. I've got my money set on Minnesota. I think it's going to be an interesting game, but this is the stage for Sam Darnold to work his magic. It really is. All righty, folks. Well, of course, as we've said, we've kicked off the 2025 season now with our partners at BetUS. BetUS, who has been taking care of you all season long with all the best betting lines, all of the best parlay leg bets, and the best in class sports book for over 30 years in the country. BetUS gives you all of the best experiences, and for you to start the year off in 2025, BetUS promises they'll give you more and more of the experiences that you could ever imagine, not to mention having your very own account manager all throughout the remainder of the NFL season and going into NBA season, NHL season, and of course, Major League Baseball around the corner, so much more. And then not to mention college basketball has also been currently going on. So get in on the action at BetUS.com. $50 or more into your deposit that matches up to 125%. Bonuses of up to $2,000, giving you triple the fun. That means every time you bet $50 or more in your first three deposits, means more chances to win in your favor. Check out all their top-notch expertise and analysis on every single money line that's there every day, every week at BetUS.com. Not to mention also the best casino entertainment. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or seek therapy in your respective state because BetUS wants you to gamble responsibly, not recklessly. Check out BetUS for yourself to start off the new year 2025. BetUS, where the game begins.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases.
So, everybody's been kind of saving their responses about Justin Herbert's playoff performance against the Houston Texans. And look, credit. The Houston Texans look absolutely controlled and poised. But here's the other thing, though, too. I mean, there were a ton of penalties on Houston's side, but that didn't seem to matter. So here's what I will say about the Chargers and Justin Herbert. So lots of people couldn't wait to jump on this all day long. So the thing you got to understand about the Chargers is that they came into this year with the expectation that most people didn't even think they were going to win more than 7 games. I mean, there were analysts out there who didn't think that this team was capable of winning that much. And you know what? Jim Harbaugh exceeded those expectations at 11-6. I mean, give credit where credit is due from here. Now, when it came to the playoffs, nobody truthfully knew what was going to end up happening. Now, most people thought that the Chargers probably could have beaten the Houston Texans, but they didn't. I mean, they got roughed up. Outside of Ladd McConkey, they were just decimated with talent around them at their playmaker positions. They all were. And I think at this point now, if you're the Chargers, and Charger fans, understand something, is that this was a year that nobody thought that the Chargers could have exceeded those expectations. And I thought it was incredible. Now, what next season is going to look like, and especially when the team, I mean, yeah, it's heartbreaking, of course. But the thing you got to understand is that Jim Harbaugh took this team in year 1 and had shaped the culture. Check. That's one of the biggest important things. Eventually now will come the playoff wins. By the way, a couple names to really consider. You remember when we scrutinized and we criticized Lamar Jackson in his first 2 seasons? In his first 2 times when he got into the playoffs, right? Went 0-2. All right, rookie season, lost to the Chargers. 2019 MVP season, and they lost as the number 1 seed against Tennessee. And what were the comments? Lamar's never going to win a playoff game. Lamar kind of is all flashy, but we're not even sure if he's going to end up winning the playoff game. Also, Peyton Manning, in his first 2 playoff appearances, went 0-2. And by the way, didn't win a playoff game until 2003 in his 6th season in the league. Did you know that? Okay, and this is wildly respected in this league at quarterback. And so when all this Justin Herbert hate and all this Justin Herbert slander, he'll never win a playoff game. He's overrated. He's overpraised. Social media quarterback. Yes, I've been paying attention, Emmanuel Acho, but this is the thing. And by the way, Chase Daniel, who was on the facility, had this to basically say, for a lot of Justin Herbert haters out there, to basically, and he had a message for Charger fans out there who had their heads down and basically wasn't sure what was going to happen now, but you know that they're thinking about this and what next season is going to bring for them. Take a listen.
And the best thing about Jaden is when it's fourth quarter or
Wrong one. Not that one. Jeez. Okay, there we go. So here's what he had to say about this.
I will take all of this Herbert stock y'all are dumping. I will take it all in, and I will double down when he wins the playoff game next year. I will take all this stock. You're dropping stock. You're calling him social media quarterback. You're dropping stock. Yeah, I don't even know it. You're dropping stock. You were okay though. Like this out of desk, we boys. Look, it's not a good thing when you lose a playoff game, regardless.
Give me another one.
Especially when you lose a playoff game throwing 4 interceptions. Now, I will say 2 of them his fault, 2 of them not his fault. Regardless if it is, it's still interceptions. That's a fact. Don't make me get up to the big board because Colin didn't have film ready for me.
One wasn't a show. You're right. Go ahead.
All right. So to me, he didn't play well enough. This does not, for me, take anything away from what he did this year. 23 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in a season where no one expected him and them to do anything. You have Quinn Johnston. You have Ladd McConkey. You have Josh Palmer. You have DJ Chark.
Take his mic. Can we mute his mic? Yeah.
No. I let y'all finish. Y'all gonna let me finish. And when the sky is high, I feel like the ceiling is up there for Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Let's be real. No one expected him to do this. Get him a few weapons. Look, the narrative's not going to change till you win a playoff game, my guy. Like, that's a fact, right? But what I can do is I can celebrate the season. I'm not going to go in on for a bad playoff loss. I was on 2 of those 3 games. I get it, okay? But you cannot tell me and sit here and tell me, Acho, truly that this season they were 11-6 with the roster that they had offensively, 1 Pro Bowler, okay, left tackle, right tackle, Rashawn Slater, that he didn't do anything this season that mattered.
And you know what's funny about that is, and even Daniel Jeremiah ended up going out and he basically said this, that if the Chargers win 11-6 this year, and it feels a lot like this was their floor, imagine what their ceiling might look like. So I know it's hard to basically see this as of right now. And Justin Herbert, he even admitted it. Like, this game was on me. I let the team down. And you know that he's very resilient. You know that he's going to take into accountability for what ended up happening, and then not to mention some of the decisions and the throws that he made. You know that there were 2 of them that was his fault. You know that there were also 2 more of them that were batted drops that either hit the ground and it should have been converted for a first down, or they're batted and it went into the defender's hands. Mind you, give credit to Houston where credit is due. Their defense came out physical. They came out hyper-aggressive. C.J. Stroud, he clearly moved up out the pocket. Did exactly what he was supposed to. Okay? And that itself just tells you how fun C.J. Stroud really is, watching him and watching him throw the football. And then to take matters into his own hands. Justin Herbert, and I guarantee you, a lot of Charger fans, they probably are sitting at home right now questioning and doubting. Listen, take time to recoup. Okay, that's the advice that I have. Take time to recoup. Okay? Obviously, this narrative is never going to be let down because this was the same narrative that wasn't let down for Lamar Jackson. And now Lamar is finally winning playoff games. They finally got the monkey off his back. Imagine how much of a sigh of relief that it will be when Justin Herbert finally gets his playoff win. Finally. Okay? And by the way, there is no better leader at the helm that you could expect from than Jim Harbaugh. Okay? He took a team that was 5-12, turned them around and became 11-6. All you got to do is you got to get playmakers. You got to at least fix that interior O-line because there were pressures everywhere. Okay, you know how many times defenders was smacking his throwing arm because they knew that once he was up and under pressure and he could not throw to anybody outside of Ladd McConkey. No separation. They were decimated on talent. And if this was the floor, that they went 11-6, imagine what the ceiling will be by next year. Okay. They have $115 million in cap space. They have 10 draft picks. They have all the good things working for them. And by the way, Joe Ortiz is a very smart guy, and he comes from a Baltimore organization. Okay, he comes from that kind of culture. They're tough, they're physical, and then not to mention, they're very smart people in that building. That's why Baltimore is widely respected. And it only took Lamar Jackson up to that point to finally win a playoff game, to get that monkey off his back. And now you are starting to love with what you're seeing from Lamar Jackson. Okay? I mean, think about how you felt when Peyton Manning lost the first 2 playoff games, right, in his career until he finally won one in 2003. You know what people did? They were like, oh, Peyton Manning, we love that guy. You guys are all going to end up going back at this. And for those that are selling their stock right now on Justin Herbert, you could go ahead and give it to me. I'll be like Chase Daniel. Give it to me. Give it to me. Because initially, you're going to see this really build its way through. And this was a very impressive season. I understand the playoff loss may sting and it may look bad, but don't be fixated on right now what the bad is. Be optimistic about what the future beholds. That's what every Charger fan should do. And then not to mention, listen, fans will be fans. They'll heckle. They'll say Justin Herbert's not worthy. He's not a top 10 quarterback. If you don't think he's a top 10 quarterback, you're out of your mind. Okay? And I've seen a lot of this wonder. I've seen a lot of this. Okay? Give it time. Give it at least the moment for it to flourish. This culture is trending in the right direction. Just wait and imagine what this will look like, because I know a lot of this is people are like, the Chargers are going to Charger. They're doing the same exact thing every single time. I mean, hell, I've heard a lot of hounding on Charger fans where it was just like, you're never going to win a playoff game. You're going to do the same old spiel. You're going to do the same old stuff, and it's never going to change, and it's never going to end up getting any better. Be patient. Take a deep breath. Let it cook. Let it build. Let it flourish. And let's see what the offseason could do. Time for the news.
This is the hot press.
Sometimes I have to be like, America's motivator when it comes to things like this. Because, I mean, look, I had a bit of doubt. I had a bit of it. But then in the end, I had to take a step back and I had to really realize, okay, you know what? It may not look great right now, but give this thing some time for it to flourish. Jim Harbaugh knows how to work his wonders. He'll get the right guys. He'll at least, they're going to go out and spend. And even, Joe Ortiz, the GM, literally said, like, this was only the beginning of it. And this may be the worst offensive roster Justin Herbert's ever had. So that means there's going to be money to spend. You're going to turn this thing around, and let's just see what will happen in the end. Okay, I promise you that. So a couple of some news. So Mike Vrabel, of course, who took the New England job, and the reason for this is because they've got their franchise quarterback in Drake May. Now, Mike Vrabel, as I told everybody, is give this thing some time to really flourish. And listen, this is a prime opportunity for the New England Patriots because they're not a broken culture. They never have been. They're just turning the page of a 20-year dynasty and dominance. And now you're turning the page and thinking of something new. So Drake May, like I told a lot of people, he has the makings to be a franchise quarterback. He just needed to fix up some of the things that we talked about in early on when he was a draft prospect, and he's very much flourished. Now, they're in a prime spot because they're in the top 10 picks. They got a lot of money to spend, and Mike Vrabel is a culture guy. And New England's always had a track record of having a top 10, top 15 defense So that's never been a problem and an issue for New England to basically shape up. It was mostly because of the personnel. Now, one of the news reports that I saw early on is that they ended up finding a GM who's reuniting with Mike Vrabel and coming into New England. And this is actually very good news because they'll finally get somebody that has at least an eye for the talent. And that's mostly offensive playmakers, offensive line, maybe have to add in another running back to at least keep the run game consistent. But there's a lot. Cowden was the one that they talked about. So he's leaving his job and is going to potentially be hired on as the GM, as he's very close with Mike Vrabel. So it seems to me they've got all those smart people in the building. They got the right people. And even when he mentioned in the press conferences, he's going to bring in the right personnel to help coach these players. He's also going to end up having the GM who has a knack for talent, who's going to bring in all of his people in the staff upstairs to basically go and find themselves offensive playmakers, offensive linemen, and ways to shape this. And I have a feeling that because of where this is shaping for New England, this could potentially be a playoff team if all of this works right. Because listen, I'm watching Pittsburgh right now, and it seems to me Pittsburgh, they're kind of already out the door with Mike Tomlin. I know, widely respected in all of what he's done for this organization for years. They're not creative, they're not innovative, and that's where I think is the problem. They haven't even addressed the offensive line in the last few years. That's become a problem. They've been defensive culture, trust and believe, and yet the other thing about them is that they've been having wide receiver problems. Now, they haven't missed on a lot of their offensive playmakers. I mean, Pat Freiermuth, he's a hit. George Pickens, love him, but sometimes you just got to shape up the mindset. You got to shape up the maturity. So I think New England has a chance to truthfully make the playoffs next year. If all of this goes right, if they're spending the money, they're getting the right pieces, they're complimenting all around and their potential franchise quarterback in Drake May, I think there's going to be a lot of really good things to happen. So, well, I'll tell you what, this is going to be interesting for the offseason for the NFL, and we're going to be all about it all season. So, Nakobe Dean for the Eagles, the linebacker, he is expected to be out for the rest of the playoffs with a knee injury after hearing reports that he had tore a patellar tendon in his left knee in Sunday's wildcard win over the Packers, and is deemed to miss the remainder of the postseason due to the injury. So what a crushing blow for the Eagles. Now, they may have won that game against Green Bay, but there were some question marks. There were question marks on the offensive line play. There was question marks when it came to Jalen Hurts and just the fluidity of the offense. But Philadelphia got the win. The question mark now becomes, can they fix up some of the stuff that kind of looked inconsistent against Green Bay and be ready for the divisional round next weekend? So, and again, Nakobe Dean, definitely a pivotal part of that defense and the linebacking core, but I just think, Philadelphia, I trust them with the amount of talent that they have, but they got to clean some stuff up. They got to get themselves right. I mean, yeah, they squeaked out that win against Green Bay, and it was very questionable. And Green Bay, who ground and pound football team with Josh Jacobs and multiple others, I mean, they were able to get it, but there are question marks, especially when you have a team like Washington who's built on adversity, and they're just kind of riding this train right now with how far that they could possibly get. So there's an interesting insight. And then the other thing is, let's just see what happens with Minnesota and the Rams tonight, because then it's all going to shape further and forward into what the remainder of the NFC playoffs looks like. So Baker Mayfield as you know, what a rough outing it was for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield ended up going and saying that he takes blame for the costly fumble that ended the Bucs season. So as everybody remembered in that loss against Washington, 23-20, Baker Mayfield came on the presser and basically said that comes back to me, just timing it up correctly. First one all year that it happened on. So obviously the timing of it, not great, being backed up. Defense had done a hell of a job getting us the ball, another fourth down stop. And yeah, unfortunate that falls on me. So look, this organization will be fine. Jason Light, the GM. Now the question mark, of course, is do you really trust, Todd Bowles? Now, the hardest thing that I think Tampa Bay is having to go through is they got a hot commodity in their offensive coordinator in Liam Cohen. So if he was to leave the building, now what's going to be the next step for Tampa Bay Buccaneers? So again, I love Baker Mayfield, and I love what he's done in this organization thus far, and it really solidifies who they truthfully are and who they will be in the near future. So Tampa Bay, I have no doubt on. I trust their GM. I trust a lot of their pieces in that building. So yeah, costly fumble, yeah, that it happened. But I mean, that was a well-fought game. So I'm not going to bury my head in the sand of how this game turned out, but that is something that eventually they will want to clean up going into next season. But I trust their GM. I trust that they're going to get a lot of their pieces right, because there are some guys who are going to be leaving. Chris Godwin's going to be on the market. There's going to be several others, but they did at least find the replacement in Jalen McMillan, that young receiver from Washington. He emerged, and so did Bucky Irving. So they've got a run game. So there's going to be, it's actually not as brutal as most people think it is. But you got to think, Atlanta, I mean, they want to turn this thing around. Carolina with Bryce Young, they want to get right. So there's going to be lots of things that are going to happen all throughout the offseason. But Tampa Bay, it was a great season that they were under, but it sucks that it had to end the way it did. All right, so there was the news.
This is the hot press.
I do want to go to the Pittsburgh and the Baltimore Ravens game. And by the way, Baltimore looks scary good. So does the Buffalo Bills. Okay. But that game, that Saturday night, you just saw when everything comes into fruition with Baltimore, when you get a Derrick Henry and a healthy run game that at least pulls the weight off of Lamar Jackson's back, because Lamar's very twitchy and he can also throw the ball efficiently. This is by far the best year that Lamar Jackson has had as a passer. And I think a lot of that is kudos to Todd Monken. When they moved off Greg Roman, I mean, you know that they were a run-first pass offense. They are. But a lot of this is accurate throws. Once Todd Monken came into the building, Lamar Jackson started to become his own. And he's starting to get accurate with the football. He now finally has weapons outside of Zay Flowers, who wasn't there. But John Harbaugh did mention there is a possible return for him. But this is the best-looking Baltimore Ravens team that you can see. I know defensively could be a little bit questionable, but they've been in these situations before. And all it truthfully had to take was for them to at least get the offense right. They then went and got a running back who they didn't even have to pay a massive fortune for. So that's good news. So Baltimore, I mean, we know how widely respected they are. They're very competitive. They do a lot of things right. And at the same time, like all they had to basically do was get at least the weapons right, for Lamar Jackson, and you're starting to see Rashad Bateman come into his own. Mark Andrews back and healthy. Isaiah Likely as a secondary tight end option. And then not to mention, that they got other weapons. But the thing about Pittsburgh is that Pittsburgh looked a lot like Philadelphia last year. They looked very good at the start of the season. And part of that is because they were experimenting with Justin Fields, with getting a lot of these RPO plays. And then eventually they switched to Russell Wilson because he could stretch the field. Okay, he could stretch those plays. That's the one thing that was the knock on Justin Fields. Now, could Justin Fields make a return to Pittsburgh in the offseason? That's left to be said. But I think in the end, something has to change in this Pittsburgh culture. Something has to change. I don't know what it is that they've got to do, but I mean, they've been a very proud organization for the longest time. And remember when Mike Tomlin came in here, when he came into the building, he was inheriting Big Ben, and he was inheriting all of these. He was inheriting the defense, the offensive weapons, and then eventually they went on to win a Super Bowl in Super Bowl 43. They won their 6th in franchise history. But now the question remains is, and this is true for every workplace, is usually you don't want to go in being too comfortable. Okay? When you initially take the job, of course you're going to learn about how strong and proud the culture is, which Pittsburgh's very proud. They're a very strong culture. They're all about defense. They're all about packing punches. Okay? They're very physical. But eventually, the longer you coach or the longer you work in this space, you eventually start to become comfortable. Don't get settled with the idea of being too comfortable. Don't. Because that's where a lot of just the character now starts to come out. And it starts to come out differently. You always want to be on top of your game. Act like you're uncomfortable, but not too uncomfortable to the point where you're afraid to change. So, see, look, consistency can happen in one of two ways. Okay, one, it's built in positivity to where you're innovating for the future. You're starting to see what the current state of the NFL is. And a lot of this is, it's pro offense. You got to get the pieces right, especially when you're trying to protect your franchise quarterback. And listen, they brought in Russell Wilson because they realized that with the development of their quarterbacks, from Kenny Pickett to Mason Rudolph to Duck Hodges, like after Big Ben retired, this looked like a disaster. And you were not going to go in this season mediocre at quarterback when you got Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Cleveland's defense twice a year. You were never going to do that. So Pittsburgh did the right thing by going and getting Russ, because veteran quarterback, he's not there to be the savior of a franchise because they've already built a culture, never having a losing season, all the rest of this stuff. So he's never having to do that. But the biggest question mark now is that this consistency that Pittsburgh's put together, is that, are you going to be just comfortable with just having no losing season? Is that it? Is that the standard in Pittsburgh? Like, because if that's the case, then you're never going to win a playoff game. You're never going to end up getting to another Super Bowl if this is the case. So I know it may look kind of tough to have this kind of conversation, but it has to be said. I love Tomlin. I really do. I respect him as a coach. But sometimes it's okay to have something new. And I guarantee you that if Mike Tomlin was to test the market, somebody's going to call. Somebody's going to want him because he's still young. He came into this league coaching at 35. So he's got years on his belt. And that's not the problem. The problem is that you've settled on and you got too comfortable with the idea that as long as we don't have a losing season, we're good here. That's it? That's your standard? That's the one thing that you kind of have to change up and shake up some things. People don't like that, but you have to respect the fact that this is something that needs to be done. Pittsburgh is wildly respected, but it's okay to have these questions about Mike Tomlin. When was the last time that they've ever had a healthy offensive line, or at least a consistent one? It's been years. They haven't truthfully had one. Their run game with Najee Harris looks so spotty that's why they declined the fifth-year option. So I feel like they're probably going to get a new running back in this building, but all these things are pointing towards offense needs to get right. You're not scoring 25-plus points a game. It's going to be very hard to take you seriously. That's why Baltimore did the things they did, because Pittsburgh was leaning on this with their defense. And eventually, what happens when you lean into a defense that had been solid and shut down all year long? They eventually get tired, they get gashed, and this is what you're going to get. They had to play Derrick Henry in the playoffs. And you know that that's not fun. So Pittsburgh, maybe it's time to find a new identity. But and like I said, I think it's going to take them having to get a new coaching regime in this building. I love Tomlin, but I think it's time to get something new and give it time. If this team doesn't make the playoffs next year, be okay with the fact that you're experimenting and trying something new. But if you're stuck on the fact that we're not going to have a losing season and we make the playoffs, be okay with the fact that you're probably going to be a first-round exit for like the next 5 years. It just happens. This is why, look at the blueprints. I mean, you think Buffalo only just wants to have no losing season? Do you think Baltimore, their division rival, just wants no losing season? No. They want to get into the playoffs. They want to get deep in the playoffs. And that's why they went and got Derrick Henry. Because they realized that, call it what you will, last year they ran away from the run. That's fine. But then they eventually got a runner, and it didn't even break their bank. And this is the version of Baltimore you get. And man, does Lamar Jackson look happy. So this may look like a year for Baltimore to really make that stretch. I mean, you're going to have Buffalo, who lost Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, and then got Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman. You got both your tight ends in Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. But this is the best. This is the best looking version of Buffalo. That's why I think. But this is why I think for Buffalo, this looks like the best year for them. That's why I can't wait for that matchup to Baltimore and Buffalo. Man, is that going to pack a punch. I can't wait. So I do want to talk about, the future of Denver. Okay, so for myself, living currently in Denver, Colorado, what a year it's been for the Broncos. Don't bury your heads in the sand. Just like the Chargers, the Denver Broncos are also ahead of schedule. They are. They came in this year where they've had arguably one of the top offensive linemen with both pass protection and run protection. They've also had one of the top-tier best defenses all season long. Pat Surtain might end up making a case to be a defensive player of the year. And look at some of their fronts. Zach Allen, Malcolm Roach, Nick Benito. These are some guys that are going to be some household names in the next 5 years. They will be. So Denver, when Bo Nix came into the building, all I knew is that he came in with experience out of college with 61 plus starts. I knew that he was going to be somebody that when you give him a competent coach like Sean Payton, he was going to work to build a very strong and healthy relationship and was going to get the best out of Bo Nix. And look what's happening. Now, Jaden Daniels, I think arguably is going to win Rookie of the Year. But the second one right behind him is Bo Nix. And you know what? You can be comfortable with that. Because Bo Nix gave you like the relief that you're not having to think about that Russell Wilson contract anymore. Once that is done, Denver, the possibilities are sky high. Now, I know with as far as their talent level, I mean, they got Cortland Sutton and they got Marvin Mims. And then after that, there's questionable guys. They're going to need a tight end. They're probably going to need a running back because they've had this running back by committee. And man, how inconsistent was that? Audric Estime one game, then Javonte Williams, and then Jaleel McLaughlin. I mean, there was so much inconsistency in the run game. I couldn't even tell who was going to run the football next. Was it going to be Bo Nix if that was the case? And Bo Nix is twitchy too. So Denver can smile with the fact that the future's bright for them. And Sean Payton, say what you will, that was only his second season in Denver to really work this up. But I'll tell you what, though. I'll tell you one thing. Sean Payton, when he goes into his third season with the Denver Broncos, I mean, it's going to look a lot better. You're going to have a second year in with Bo Nix. You're probably going to end up going into the free agent market. You probably will. And you'll probably end up going and getting some much needed important help, whether it's weaponry, whether it's, whether it's a running back. But I'll tell you what, though, I mean, I'm seeing all the possibilities and all the names that point all out there. I mean, you got Ashton Genty, Cam Scatabo, Amarian Hampton, the young running back out of North Carolina. So that's a big thing. It's a very big thing. And that's an exciting step for Denver. So give this puppy some time to cook. Denver will be there. And much like with the Chargers, these teams in the offseason, I'm excited to watch. The one that questions me is going to be the Raiders, but they've also got money in cap space. So hopefully they can figure out some of those issues and maybe potentially get their future franchise quarterback. But New England's going to be a fun one to watch in the offseason. Denver's going to be a fun one to watch in the offseason. Washington and the Chargers. There's about 4 to 5 teams in the offseason that I'm paying attention to and to seeing with what they get as far as free agents and in the draft. But those are the teams I could see make some serious pushes to at least get better and look like they'll want to consistently be in the playoffs. But Denver, they took away the 8-year drought, which good for them. And Bo Nix is giving you all the high hopes of a bright future. One last thing of it, because there were a bunch of there were some headliners that started to come up. So Penn State's Drew Aller, he announced that he's coming back for another season in college football. And you know what? There's unfinished business there. So I don't blame Drew Aller. And this is what you're realizing about some of these quarterbacks. So with Drew Aller going back into college is actually a very good thing for Penn State. And it's a very good thing for Drew Aller personally. Because like I said, outside of Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, this rookie quarterback class sucks. Okay, sorry to have to be brutally honest and blunt, but this sucks. Okay, I've got both those quarterbacks that can make an impact in an organization, and then after that, I have a few projects. But Carson Beck, he ain't going into the pros. He's going to Miami. Probably spend another year, reevaluate, work up on his craft. Drew Aller coming back into Penn State, work on his craft, And then the only one who's going into the draft that most people are not very high and set on is Quinn Ewers. Because Quinn Ewers, the thing I worry about, and what I think a lot of pro scouts in the NFL are going to also see as well, is you're going to see how sporadic that he can get. You watch that ASU game, you watch that game against Ohio State, and even that game against Clemson. There were times where Quinn Ewers started getting sporadic. Good luck with that in the NFL. Because, listen, I have a very trustworthy friend of mine who I know breaks down film. He's going to the Senior Bowl again this year, him and his team. And I get film all the time. Because it helps to break down some of these draft prospects. It really does. I think of guys, because last year I had my top 10 draftees, and a lot of them actually hit. Next year, I'm going to hopefully see a fully healthy J.J. McCarthy, who was my number one, and I saw a lot of very good things during the preseason. But Alufa Shanu, man, what a pick he is at the offensive line, especially when you got Tyron Smith, who's probably going to end up retired. Okay, he's clearly hit. Then you've got Joe Milton, who, of course, lots of people are already inquiring about him because they know that they're desperate for a franchise quarterback. But if he generates some phone calls, that's a pretty good prime spot for New England. They probably will take a quarterback just to at least have a backup in competition for Drake May. But I would have thought Miami or a couple of places would have taken Joe Milton. Another one, Alufa Shanu, or Maiatulatu, my bad. He's a pretty good promising edge rusher for Indianapolis, no matter what Indianapolis season looked like. But he was pretty good. So I expect him to have a bright future next year. Malik Neighbors, as you know, had turned out to be a very good hit. Not to mention, Lad McConkey and multiple others. That's why I'm so excited for what the future brings. So this next draft, it's defense heavy, offensive linemen. You've also sprinkled in some wide receivers and running backs. But the quarterbacks outside of Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are nothing but projects. And I think Drew Aller, Carson Beck, multiple other quarterbacks, it was a smart thing to do that. And then not to mention, too, you got Dylan Gabriel coming in. So there may be some that might be under the radar quarterbacks. There might be. But I'm just looking at this. And I just think, for what it's worth, there's going to be some organizations up out there who are probably going to be much more comfortable taking a veteran quarterback instead of taking one of these rookies. Tennessee's got the number one pick, and they've already vocalized that they are not taking a quarterback. They're going to run another year with Will Levis. Let's see how that goes. We know that relationship looked pretty rocky to start with, but it was a new playbook. It was a new coaching regime. It was a new direction. But Rand Carthon, they fired their GM, and there's already GM calls right now that's happening in Tennessee. So if they get it right, they got Peter Skoronski, they got J.C. Latham in their offensive line. Maybe they could go get another one. I think maybe an offensive weapon. I think maybe some more defense. But I think the Titans are in an interesting spot. So, but I just look at this and look, Drew Aller, and by the way, this actually, if you watch that Penn State game against Notre Dame, that was a lot of physical play. And look, much like Ryan Day at Ohio State, James Franklin eventually is going to get that monkey off his back. And Drew Aller, this is why I was like, outside of some of their quarterbacks they've had in the past, who was really competent at Penn State? Drew Aller, at the very least, will come back, refine his skill set, and maybe be a better quarterback prospect for the future. So, at least Penn State, they got into the playoffs. They got to as far as they did against Notre Dame. until Notre Dame got the last laugh. Now they're in the national championship. But tip your hat to Penn State. They had two very good running backs I like. Now they're probably going to lose their star tight end in Tyler Warren. But if you got some receiver help, and at the same time, you keep building that offensive line, and Drew Aller, he's going to come in and really make a bigger jump than what this past year gave him. So I'd keep your eyes on Penn State for next year, because I think that could be a team that has the makings to potentially go further in the playoffs. Okay, and by the way, lots of people vocalized and thought that they had the easiest path into the playoffs. I mean, they faced SMU, they played Boise State, and then they played Notre Dame. And, I mean, Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, like, he's building a culture there. So I think it's just going to take this time for James Franklin to really recoup, really refocus, but at least smile of the fact you've got your quarterback coming back. And Drew Aller, amongst a lot of these quarterback prospects next year, could have a possibility to be a top quarterback prospect. He could. There's a lot of them. In Arch Manning, he's going to have his full season on his belt in Texas. I expect them to make a big jump because, like I said, Quinn Ewers looked pretty sporadic, and you saw that out for your own self. But, yeah, I think Penn State's going to be fine. With Drew Aller coming back, that's a sigh of relief. They'll at least have their quarterback. They'll at least have their game manager there. And expect them to really go on a serious run next year. Expect them to. Much like I was talking about with Ohio State and Ryan Day. When Michigan won the Natty with Jim Harbaugh, Ohio State was going to be that team next in line that was going to eventually win the Natty. And they're already here, and I predict them that, I mean, this game's going to be physical either way. But I think because of the talent, because of what Ohio State had been leaning on all season long, I mean, this is their moment. So expect Penn State come next year that they could have a moment of their own too. I mean, the Big Ten, it's really shaping itself up to where it's very competitive of a conference. Not to say that the SEC will be terrible. You already know how top-heavy the SEC was this year. Look at the strengths of schedule. Look at the competitions. It was very competitive. But next year, I'm looking at Arch Manning, Drew Aller, Garrett Nussmeier. I'm looking at a lot of quarterbacks next season. And boy, I think it's going to be a very good jump. So just keep in mind of that. It's going to be something else. But all right, folks. Appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with me tonight. We're going to have our show on Wednesday. We're going to recoup and we're going to refocus. Boy, I'm excited for it. Got an off day tomorrow, by the way, celebrating the wife's early birthday. And for those of you that are South Park fans here in Colorado, we got ourselves our reservation at Casa Bonita. Excited about that. So for those of you that are South Park fans, if you haven't done so, just try it. It's a hell of an experience. But appreciate everybody for being on here tonight. Show sponsored by BetUS. $50 or more into your deposit in your first 3 deposits. Up to 125% bonuses of up to $2,000. Triple the fun with the award-winning sports book for over 30 years. Some of the best in-game parlay late bets and some of the best-in-class account managers to get the best experience for yourself. Check out BetUS, where the game begins, and by SeatGeek. Don't lose your seat, wherever it may be, in your favorite sports arena, to catch up with your favorite team, your favorite artist at some of your favorite on some of your favorite concert venues, or whatever your interests are, comedy shows, art clubs, bands, whatever it may be. SeatGeek has it all just for you by going online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on the Google Play and the App Store. And please, as a gift to you to kick off 2025, use promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off of your first purchase of your first ticket. With yours truly, Nick Silva. Have a great night, and we'll see you guys Wednesday night on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, everyone.